Back in studio with the Mac to offer his thoughts on this one. And these Vikings, they certainly seem to have that it factor about them. The one-score wonders are back. Their 8th one-score victory this season. What's made them so good in these types of moments?
The cardiac Vikings, right? They embrace the moment when things get to be a bit tight. They don't press. They stay the course in terms of their game plan, and they just find ways to execute. And the execution all starts with their quarterback. Get this, Sam Darnold, once again, guys, an unbelievable day. 246 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, super efficient. And Sam Darnold is looking like a legit all-pro. And get this, I'll do one step for you in terms of just showing how great he's been. In the last 6 ball games, Sam Darnold, 15 passing touchdowns, 1 interception. Name me another quarterback who's been better in that 6-game stretch. I know where you might name 1 or 2, but in terms of under the radar, Sam Darnold has really been balling.
And what we thought this year was going to be, backing up a young star or maybe providing some runway for him to learn instead, perhaps the quarterback of the future. We did the Darnold contract thing a week ago. We got to stay here in the present because there's so much riding on these next 3 weeks or these next 2 weeks after a win here over the Seahawks. It's the Packers and the Lions ahead for Minnesota. It could be a 15-win season. No team has won 15 or more games since 2015 in the Panthers. It could be the Lions and the Vikings for a potential 15th win, a division, a 1 seed. It's all still on the line for Minnesota. When you look at Seattle, this loss doesn't cook them, but you see LA come away with a win in East Rutherford. You take this loss here, and that path to the playoffs gets a little steeper now.
Yeah, no question, because when you look at Seattle, this was a prime opportunity for you to stay within reach of the Rams. And this wasn't back and forth and fair, but the issue once again for the Seattle Seahawks, untimely turnovers. Granted, that last turnover there, of course, Geno was trying to press, trying to make something happen with no timeouts, trying to get into field goal range. But the earlier turnover, you have to see the football field better, and that has been the issue with Geno when he's been inconsistent. It's about not seeing the football field as best as he could.
And it plagues them in this moment. Geno obviously giving it a go here, less than 100%, finished 31 of 43, 314. They lean back on Kenneth Walker, not as much Zach Charbonnet. In fact, just 1 tote for -1 yard for Charbonnet, who really carried them these last couple of weeks in the absence of Walker. In the NFC North, it's all out there for Minnesota still. We've looked at Detroit as this unstoppable force, this immovable object. This week maybe wavering from that with all the injuries that they've dealt with throughout the season. But you look at Minnesota and you look at Detroit. What are the advantages, one over the other, on both sides of that? If you're going to try and put together a game plan to beat that team in Week 18, what's it look like?
Well, the thing is, when you look at both teams, do we believe the Detroit Lions have the healthy individuals defensively to stop Sam Darnold, right? And
crazy sentence. I mean, say that sentence a year ago. Crazy sentence.
And that's all because of the health, because they've been dealing with so many injuries on all 3 levels of their defense, and they've been getting some serviceable production from some guys, but one would think eventually the backups might start performing like backups. And then my question in terms of Minnesota, remember, we were raving about their defense and how opportunistic they've been, putting pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Can they have the success needed to be able to slow down the Detroit Lions? Because you can have all the concerns you want to have about the Detroit Lions defensively. One thing we know about their offense, if you're going to find a way to beat Detroit, you have to put up at least 30 points, anywhere between 28 to 30 points. That's the sweet spot because their offense has been that good. So it's all about the defensive questions for me in terms of what we potentially could see in the final week of the season to determine who will win the division and ultimately get the #1 spot potentially in the NFC.
This also makes it all the more unlikely for Philadelphia after their loss on Sunday to find their way to a home playoff game throughout this season. Obviously, still en route to a home playoff game by way of division, but that 1 seed becomes all the more less likely because we do have that head-to-head between the Lions and the Vikings. It's a moving target right now in the North and elsewhere, but you got to feel good if you're the Minnesota Vikings going to play anyone, anywhere with Kevin O'Connell as your head coach right now. How has he taken this team that found ways to lose these types of ball games in the past and made it almost their biggest asset?
Well, #1, he's a player's coach, right? He's able to relate to the players in the locker room. That's the first important thing. #2, he is a leader of men. His ability to motivate and just encourage his guys has been well documented. And the final key piece for Kevin O'Connell in terms of his overall success as a head coach, the quarterback mentorship. right? We saw this sprinkle with his team a year ago when Kirk Cousins went down with that injury. Remember, Joshua Dobbs came into play, Nick Mullins, the who's of who. They still came in and gave serviceable production, to say the least. But then when you get a guy that has more talent than those said quarterbacks in Sam Darnold, a guy who just haven't really been developed the right way, you see what we're seeing right now from Kevin O'Connell. And I know Sean McVay has been known to be the quarterback whisperer, but hey, don't look too far down the road because Kevin O'Connell is right there in terms of what he can do at the quarterback position and getting a guy like Sam Darnold to perform like an all-pro.
Talent is one thing, talent development is a whole other, and this is a team that's taking what they have on that roster and maximizing. Again, 8 wins here in one-score games this season, 8-1 in those types of games, and it's always going to be a wild one when you're on the road in Seattle. Anytime you can make that flight back with the win, Minnesota feeling real good about their chances in any and all games. Taking a look at some numbers coming out of this one. I mean, we've had the green room conversation a couple times, like fantasy draft. Like you're starting a team, you're the GM, Mac, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. I don't think there's a wrong answer.
There's no wrong answer.
10 plus, 100 plus, 2 plus in Vikings history, Justin Jefferson. Now on that list.